The morning Jake Morrison received the message that would change everything started like any other aboard the UES Horizon. Coffee in the mess hall tasted like recycled water and metal, the artificial gravity hummed with its usual vibration, and the stars outside looked the same as they had for the past 3 months of deep space patrol. Jake had been captain of the exploration vessel for 2 years now, mapping new systems and checking on the outer colonies that stretched across 17 star systems from Earth. The communication came through at 0800 ship time, marked with the highest priority codes Jake had seen in his entire career. Admiral Lisa Parker herself appeared on the screen, her face drawn and serious in a way that made Jake's stomach drop. Behind her in the command center of Luna Station, officers moved with the kind of urgent purpose that meant something terrible had happened. "All ships are to return to defensive positions immediately," Parker said without any greeting. "We have confirmed reports that the Vorthic Dominion has entered human space. New Denver and Port Liberty are gone. No survivors have been found." Jake felt the bridge go silent around him. Every officer and crew member knew what those words meant. The Vorthak were legends throughout the galaxy, stories told to frighten children and remind adults why certain regions of space remained empty. They had ruled 3 entire arms of the galaxy for 10,000 years, conquering every species they encountered with methodical efficiency. No one had ever successfully resisted them for more than a few years. Ryan Clark, the ship's tactical officer, spoke first. "Captain, our sensors are picking up debris fields where the colonies should be. The signatures match Vorthak weapon systems from the historical records." Jake nodded slowly, trying to process what he was seeing. New Denver had been home to 2 million people just a week ago. Port Liberty had housed the families of miners and researchers, children who had never seen Earth but called that distant colony home. Now there was nothing but scattered metal and the fading heat signatures of destroyed buildings. The next few hours passed in a blur of reports and orders. Ship after ship reported similar findings as they reached the outer colonies. The Vorthak had struck without warning, without demands for surrender, without any of the usual protocols that civilized species followed. They had simply arrived and erased everything human from those systems. Commander Helen Ross, Earth's liaison with the galactic community, sent a message that arrived just as the Horizon began its return journey to Earth, the Zentari Republic. Humanity's closest alien allies had issued an official statement. Ambassador Ross read it aloud with barely controlled anger in her voice. The Zentari advise immediate surrender to prevent further loss of life. Resistance against the Vorthic Dominion has never succeeded. Humanity should prepare for processing and integration into the Dominion's workforce. This is the same advice we would give any species facing the Vorthak. Jake had met Zentari before, and they were good people in their own way. They had helped humanity learn galactic languages and customs, traded technology and knowledge freely, and genuinely seemed to care about human welfare. But they were also 1,000,000 years old as a civilization, and they had learned to survive by knowing when to bend and when to break. The fear in Ambassador Ross's voice when she spoke about the Vorthak was real and deep. What puzzled Jake was the response from Earth. Instead of the panic he expected, instead of the desperate mobilization or preparation for evacuation, the messages from home seemed almost calm. President Matthew Kane's address to all colonies was broadcast within hours of the first reports, and Jake watched it twice to make sure he had heard correctly. "Citizens of the colonies and Earth," Kane said, standing in what looked like the Situation Room beneath the Capitol, "we have received confirmation that the Vorthic Dominion has begun military operations against human space. We are implementing defensive protocols immediately. All colonial populations should remain calm and follow local emergency procedures. Military units are moving to defensive positions." Then Kane had said something that made no sense to Jake or anyone else listening. "It's time to show them what we're really made of." The phrase translated poorly into galactic languages, according to the alien observers who monitored human communications. But even in English it seemed wrong for the situation. Humanity was facing the most powerful force in galactic history, a species that had never been defeated, with technology that could reshape matter itself. What could humans possibly show them that would matter? Dr. Carolyn Fisher joined the Horizon's return journey, evacuated from her research station at the edge of human space. She was a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien life forms, and she had managed to recover some samples from the Vorthak attack sites before fleeing. As the ship traveled toward Earth, she worked in the science labs with an intensity that worried the medical staff. "Captain," she said during one of their brief conversations, "the Vorthak aren't just technologically advanced. They're biologically perfect for what they do. No natural predators, no diseases that affect them, no obvious weaknesses in their physiology. They've spent 10,000 years conquering because nothing in the galaxy has ever been able to threaten them biologically." Jake asked her what she meant by that, and Fisher's answer stayed with him for the rest of the journey. "Every species they've conquered has tried to fight them with technology. Better weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. But the Vorthak have had 10,000 years to perfect their technology. No one has ever thought to approach the problem from a biological perspective." The journey back to Earth took 6 days, and during that time more reports arrived. The Vorthak fleet was massive beyond anything in recorded history. 50,000 ships of various sizes, with their largest vessels measuring over 100 kilometers in length. They moved through space with the confidence of a force that had never been truly challenged, destroying human military assets with casual efficiency while leaving the infrastructure of conquered worlds intact for their own use. But there were also strange reports that didn't fit the usual Vorthak pattern. Instead of immediately enslaving captured populations, they seemed to be studying them. Instead of strip mining conquered worlds, they were conducting what looked like biological surveys. Several refugees reported seeing Vorthak ground forces collecting samples of local plant and animal life. When the Horizon finally reached Earth's solar system, Jake saw something he had never expected. The planet was busy with activity, but it wasn't the frantic preparation of a world about to be conquered. Ships moved with purpose between Earth and its orbital facilities, but there was an organized quality to the movement that suggested planning rather than panic. Admiral Parker met Jake personally when he docked at Luna Station, and her first words confirmed his growing suspicion that Earth had been preparing for this moment for longer than anyone realized. "Captain Morrison," she said, "welcome to Project Pandora. It's time you learned what we've really been building out here." Lieutenant Colonel Danny Wright had seen war before, but nothing had prepared him for watching reality itself become a weapon. From his command bunker on New Colorado, the fortress world that served as humanity's main defensive position, he watched through orbital cameras as Vorthak ships approached the system. The vessels moved through space like living things, their hulls shifting and changing as they advanced. The first engagement began at 0600 local time when human defense platforms opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, nuclear missiles that burned like small suns, and railguns that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed all focused their fury on the approaching Vorthak fleet. Danny watched the tactical displays with growing horror as every single weapon either missed entirely or simply disappeared before reaching its target. The Vorthak didn't return fire immediately. Instead, their lead ships began to emit a strange energy field that made Danny's instruments go wild. Gravity readings fluctuated wildly, time measurements became inconsistent, and the very fabric of space around the human defensive positions started to behave in ways that violated every law of physics Danny had learned. "Sir," reported Sergeant Kevin Miller from the sensor station, "our defensive satellites are reporting impossible readings. The Vorthak ships aren't just using advanced technology, they're changing the fundamental properties of space around them." Danny had read the classified reports about Vorthak capabilities, but seeing them in action was different. When the enemy finally decided to eliminate the human defenses, they didn't fire weapons in any recognizable sense. Instead, they projected fields that caused matter to forget how to hold itself together. Defense platforms that had withstood asteroid impacts simply came apart at the molecular level, their atoms scattering like dust in the solar wind. The most terrifying part was how effortless it seemed. The Vorthak ships moved through human defenses, like a person walking through cobwebs, barely slowing down as they dismantled everything in their path. When they encountered the heavily armored fortress stations that protected New Colorado, they simply created gravity wells that compressed the massive structures into dense balls of metal before absorbing them into their hulls. But something about the human response puzzled Danny. His orders came directly from General Alex Turner on Earth, and they didn't sound like the commands of a desperate military facing extinction. Instead of fighting to the last man or attempting heroic sacrifices, the human forces were conducting what military manuals called a fighting withdrawal, but with strange priorities. "All units, continue delaying actions as planned," came Turner's voice over the secure channel. "Primary objective is data collection, not casualty infliction. I repeat, we are here to observe and record, not to win." Danny found himself following orders that made no sense from a traditional military perspective. Instead of concentrating firepower on Vorthak command ships, human forces were targeting smaller vessels and boarding craft. Instead of protecting strategic installations, they were ensuring that certain biological research facilities were evacuated completely, along with their entire sample collections. Dr. Carolyn Fisher had arrived on New Colorado 3 days earlier, and Danny noticed that she spent more time studying the Vorthak attacks than coordinating defenses. She had set up equipment that seemed designed to analyze the enemy rather than fight them, and her teams collected samples from everything the Vorthak touched. "Colonel Wright," she said during one brief break in the fighting, "I need you to understand something important. The Vorthak aren't just conquering us, they're studying us. Look at their attack patterns." Danny reviewed the tactical data and saw what she meant. The Vorthak could have destroyed New Colorado in minutes, but instead they were taking their time. They disabled human ships without destroying them completely, captured personnel alive when they could have simply eliminated them, and seemed particularly interested in human biological waste and medical facilities. "They're collecting samples," Fisher continued. "Soil from our agricultural domes, air from our life support systems, even waste products from our recycling plants. They want to understand how human biology works." The realization hit Danny like a physical blow. The Vorthak weren't just conquering humanity for territory or resources. They were conducting the most comprehensive biological survey in galactic history. And humans were the specimens. Over the next several days, as Vorthak forces systematically captured the outer defenses of New Colorado, Danny began to notice something else strange about Earth's response. Supply ships continued to arrive from the inner systems, but they weren't bringing the weapons and reinforcements he expected. Instead, they carried biological materials, seeds, bacterial cultures, genetic samples, and stranger things that required special containment. Captain Nicole Davis, commanding the defense station Aegis Prime in orbit around New Colorado, reported similar observations. "Colonel, the supply manifests don't make sense. We're receiving shipments of Earth organisms that have nothing to do with military operations. Fungi from deep ocean vents, bacteria from Antarctic ice, even samples of microorganisms from Earth's upper atmosphere." Danny requested clarification from General Turner and received an answer that was both reassuring and deeply unsettling. "Colonel Wright, you and your people are performing exactly as planned. Continue resistance operations for another 72 hours, then implement Withdrawal Protocol Omega. The materials you're receiving are not for your current mission. They're for what comes next." The fighting on New Colorado continued for 3 more days, and Danny learned things about Vorthak combat capabilities that no human had ever survived to report. Their boarding parties weren't just soldiers, they were something that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Human weapons passed through them without effect, but they could interact with the physical world when they chose to. They seemed more interested in capturing human technology and biological samples than in killing human defenders. When the withdrawal order finally came, Danny understood why Earth's leadership had seemed so calm about the Vorthak threat. The retreat wasn't a desperate escape from an unstoppable enemy. It was the completion of a data-gathering operation that had been planned from the beginning. As the last human transport lifted off from New Colorado, Danny watched through the rear cameras as Vorthic forces occupied the abandoned facilities. They moved with the methodical efficiency of scientists rather than conquerors, carefully cataloging everything humans had left behind and preserving samples of everything they found. "Sir," asked Sergeant Miller as their ship accelerated toward the inner system, "why does it feel like we just fed ourselves to them on purpose?" Danny didn't have an answer, but Dr. Fisher did. "Because we did," she said quietly. "And now they're going to learn what a mistake that was." The journey back to Earth took 4 days, and during that time Danny received updates that painted a picture of total Vorthic victory across human space. Colony after colony fell to their advance, but the pattern was always the same. Human forces fought just long enough to gather data, then withdrew in good order while leaving behind carefully selected materials for the Vorthic to study. By the time Danny's ship reached Earth's solar system, the Vorthic had occupied 12 human worlds and were preparing for their final assault on humanity's home system. Their fleet had grown to over 50,000 ships, reinforced by vessels freed up from garrison duties in their newly conquered territories, but Earth looked ready for them in ways that Danny was only beginning to understand. The Vorthic armada that approached Earth was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Supreme Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, watching the sensor displays that showed over 50,000 ships under his command. Each vessel was a masterpiece of technology that had taken millennia to perfect, equipped with weapons that could reshape matter at the subatomic level and defenses that had never been breached by any known force Zethkar had personally overseen. The conquest of 47 species during his long career, and this campaign against the humans had followed the same predictable pattern as all the others. Initial resistance followed by systematic withdrawal as the inferior species realized the futility of opposing Vorthic might. The humans had lasted longer than most, showing surprising tactical intelligence and coordination, but the outcome had never been in doubt. The Earth system spread out before his fleet like a target waiting to be claimed. The third planet orbited a young yellow star, surrounded by the orbital installations and defensive platforms that all spacefaring species built to protect their homeworld. Zethkar's tactical computers had already analyzed the human defenses and found them adequate for resisting primitive threats but laughably insufficient against Vorthic technology. Captain Nicole Davis received her final orders from Admiral Parker aboard the defense station. Aegis Prime. The message was brief and used terminology that would have puzzled any alien. Observers monitoring human communications. All stations implement Protocol 7, release the hounds. Davis had trained for this moment for 3 years, ever since Admiral Parker had personally selected her for the Aegis Prime command. She understood exactly what the coded phrase meant, even though the specifics of Protocol 7 had been classified above her security level until this moment. Her orders were simple: coordinate the release of billions of biological packages from concealed launch points throughout the solar system. Dr. Marcus Lee watched from his command bunker buried 3 kilometers beneath Earth's surface as his life's work prepared to face its ultimate test. For 15 years, he had led a project so classified that most world leaders believed it was theoretical research into astrobiology. In reality, Project Pandora had been developing Earth's response to exactly this scenario: invasion by a technologically superior force that could not be defeated by CONVENTIO weapons. The first wave of biological packages launched simultaneously from Earth, Luna, Mars, the asteroid belt, and dozens of concealed facilities throughout the solar system. To Vorthic sensors, they appeared as small organic objects roughly the size of a human fist, clearly biological in nature but showing no technological signatures that would identify them as weapons. The objects moved slowly compared to the speeds that space warfare normally demanded, drifting toward the Vorthic fleet like seeds carried on a cosmic wind. Zethkar watched the human response with a mixture of confusion and contempt. "They're launching biological matter at us," he informed his tactical officers. primitive organic weapons that cannot possibly penetrate our defenses. The Vorthak had encountered biological warfare before during their conquests. Several species had attempted to use engineered viruses or toxic organisms against Vorthak forces, but such attacks were easily countered by the advanced sterilization systems that protected every Vorthak vessel. Their ships could eliminate any known biological threat through a combination of radiation, chemical sterilization, and energy fields that disrupted organic, molecular structures. The first human packages reached the outer picket ships of the Vorthak fleet and did exactly what Zethkar expected. They struck the energy shields protecting the vessels and bounced off harmlessly, floating in space like debris from some failed attack. Automatic defense systems activated throughout the fleet, bathing the area around each ship in sterilizing radiation that should have destroyed any biological contamination, but something unexpected happened. Instead of being destroyed by the sterilization protocols, the biological objects seemed to absorb the energy being directed at them. The packages began to change, growing larger and developing complex surface structures that resembled both plant roots and animal circulatory systems. Dr. Lee monitored the transformation through sensors hidden throughout the solar system, watching as his enhanced organisms responded exactly as designed to the Vorthak sterilization attempts. Each package contained something the galaxy had never encountered in warfare: Earth's most successful survival specialists, creatures that had endured every extinction event in the planet's history and emerged stronger from each challenge. The primary organisms were tardigrades, microscopic animals that Earth scientists called water bears because of their clumsy movements under magnification. But these tiny creatures possessed survival capabilities that bordered on the impossible. They could survive in the vacuum of space, withstand radiation levels that would destroy any known technology, and remain dormant for centuries before awakening. When conditions became favorable, but Dr. Lee's tardigrades were not ordinary specimens. They had been enhanced through 15 years of careful genetic engineering to serve as carriers for Earth's most diverse and adaptable life forms. Each tardigrade contained within its nearly indestructible body a complete ecosystem of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites that represented billions of years of evolutionary warfare compressed into microscopic packages. As the enhanced tardigrades made contact with Vorthak hulls, they began to release their cargo through molecular-scale delivery systems that had been evolved rather than engineered. The organisms didn't attempt to directly attack the alien vessels. Instead, they began the process that had made Earth the most biologically diverse planet in the galaxy. They started to explore their new environment and adapt to its unique conditions. The advanced materials that made Vorthak hulls invulnerable to energy weapons provided an excellent substrate for fungi that could break down any molecular structure given enough time and the right conditions. The exotic energy sources that powered Vorthak technology became food sources for bacteria that had evolved in Earth's most extreme environments and could metabolize almost anything. Zethkar received the first reports of anomalous readings from his outer ships within hours of the initial contact. Hull integrity sensors were detecting microscopic changes in the molecular structure of ship armor, but the changes seemed to be improvements rather than damage. Energy efficiency readings were actually increasing in affected areas, and atmospheric processors were reporting enhanced performance. "Supreme Commander," reported his chief science officer, "the human organisms appear to be integrating with our ship systems rather than attacking them. Our vessels are experiencing improved performance in all affected areas." The report made no sense from a military perspective. Why would an enemy deploy biological agents that improved the performance of opposing forces? Zethkar ordered a full analysis of the affected ships, but the results only deepened the mystery. The human organisms were not behaving like weapons at all. Instead, they seemed to be establishing symbiotic relationships with Vorthak technology and crew members. Atmospheric systems became more efficient, radiation shielding improved, and even the physical health of Vorthak personnel in affected areas showed measurable enhancement. But Dr. Lee understood something that Zethkar could not. Earth's approach to biological warfare was based on a fundamental principle that no other species in the galaxy had ever considered. The most effective way to defeat an enemy was not to destroy them, but to make them dependent on you, the tardigrades. And their microscopic cargo were not trying to kill the Vorthek. They were trying to become indispensable to them. And hidden within the beneficial organisms were genetic triggers that would activate when Dr. Lee decided the time was right to reveal Earth's true intentions. Commander Susan Blake watched from her stealth reconnaissance ship as something impossible unfolded before her eyes. The Vorthek dreadnought Eternal Conquest, a vessel that had personally destroyed entire star systems, was changing in ways that defied every principle of space warfare she had ever learned. The massive warship's hull was not breaking apart from weapon damage, but transforming from within as if something alive was growing through its very structure. Blake had been monitoring Vorthek fleet communications for the past 6 hours, and the confusion in their voices was growing with each transmission. Ship after ship reported the same phenomena: improved performance in all systems, enhanced crew health and cognitive function, but also an increasing dependency on the biological agents that Earth had introduced to their vessels. Staff Sergeant Pete Harrison, a combat biologist who had joined Blake's reconnaissance mission, explained what they were witnessing as he analyzed the data streaming from his instruments. "The Earth organisms aren't attacking the Vorthek ships," he said. "They're turning them into hybrid biological-technological systems. The fungi are restructuring the hull materials at the molecular level, making them stronger and more efficient, while the bacteria are integrating with the power systems to optimize energy production." Blake had fought in 3 major conflicts during her career, but she had never seen anything like this. Traditional space warfare involved ships firing weapons at each other until one side was destroyed or disabled. What Earth had deployed against the Vorthek was something entirely different, a form of biological conquest that worked by making the enemy better rather than worse. Supreme Commander Zethkar found himself facing a tactical situation for which 10,000 years of Vorthek military doctrine provided no guidance. His fleet was more powerful than it had ever been, with every ship reporting enhanced capabilities across all systems. But the source of that enhancement was completely outside his control. The human organisms had become so integrated with Vorthek technology that attempting to remove them would cripple his entire armada. "Supreme Commander," reported his medical officer, "crew efficiency has increased by 30% in all affected vessels. Physical stamina is up, mental processing speed has improved, and we're seeing remarkable improvements in healing rates and disease resistance. But the biological scans show that these improvements are completely dependent on continued symbiosis with the Earth organisms." The implications of that dependency struck Zethkar like a physical blow. The Vorthek had conquered the galaxy through technological supremacy and biological perfection. They had never needed to rely on other species for anything, and the concept of symbiosis was alien to their imperial mindset. Yet here they were, their most powerful fleet in history, completely dependent on organisms from a primitive world they had come to conquer. Dr. Marcus Lee monitored the integration process from his command bunker, watching as biological sensors throughout the Vorthek fleet confirmed that Phase 1 of Operation Pandora was complete. Every major vessel in the enemy armada now hosted thriving colonies of Earth organisms that had become essential to ship operations and crew health. The symbiotic relationships had developed exactly as his models had predicted, creating a biological dependency that could not be broken without destroying the very ships and personnel it was designed to enhance. But Phase 1 had only been the preparation. Phase 2 would demonstrate why Earth's approach to warfare was more terrifying than any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. Lee activated the genetic triggers that had been dormant within the beneficial organisms for the past week. The same bacteria that had been improving Vorthek health suddenly began producing compounds that targeted specific neurotransmitters in the alien nervous system. The fungi that had been strengthening ship hulls started releasing spores that interfered with Vorthek technology in subtle but critical ways. The changes were not designed to kill or destroy. Instead, They created a state of controlled dependency that gave Earth complete influence over Vorthak decision-making processes while leaving the aliens fully aware of what was happening to them. Zs single quotes KAR felt the change immediately as the biological agents in his bloodstream began altering his brain chemistry in precise ways. His tactical thinking became sharper and more focused, but only when considering options that aligned with Earth's interests. Thoughts of resistance or independent action became increasingly difficult to maintain, not because they were blocked, but because they simply seemed less appealing than cooperation. The effect spread throughout his fleet as millions of Vorthak personnel experienced the same transformation. They remained fully conscious and aware of their situation, but their psychological priorities began shifting toward collaboration with humanity rather than conquest of it. The change felt natural and beneficial rather than forced, which made it all the more disturbing to those who recognized what was happening. Captain Nicole Davis received confirmation from Admiral Parker that Phase 2 integration was complete across the entire Vorthak fleet. The enemy armada now floated motionless in space, its crews and commanders struggling with the realization that they had become willing participants in their own conquest. But the most remarkable aspect of Earth's biological warfare was that it offered genuine benefits to those it affected. Zethkar found that his enhanced cognitive abilities allowed him to perceive tactical possibilities that had been invisible to him before. His crew performed their duties with an efficiency and satisfaction that they had never experienced in their long careers of conquest and domination. The Vorthak had spent millennia believing that their way of life represented the pinnacle of biological and technological evolution. They had conquered species after species, absorbing their knowledge and resources while maintaining their own cultural and biological superiority. Now they were discovering that symbiosis could produce capabilities that pure dominance never could. Blake watched as the Vorthak flagship began broadcasting on human communication frequencies, requesting direct dialogue with Earth's leadership. The tone of the transmissions had changed completely from the imperious demands of a conquering force to the careful negotiations of equals seeking mutual benefit. "This is Supreme Commander Zethkar of the Vorthak Dominion," came the message that would reshape galactic politics forever. "We request immediate communication with Earth's Governing Council to discuss terms of partnership and integration." Dr. Lee smiled as he monitored the transmission from his bunker. The word partnership had never appeared in Vorthak communications before this moment. Their language had contained concepts for conquest, domination, and absorption, but not for the kind of mutual cooperation that Earth was offering. Staff Sergeant Harrison understood the full implications of what had just occurred. "They're not surrendering," he explained to Blake. "They're asking to join us. Earth didn't defeat the Vorthak by destroying them. We defeated them by showing them something better than what they were." The galaxy's most feared military force had become willing participants in Earth's expansion, not through conquest or coercion, but through the irresistible appeal of biological enhancement and genuine cooperation. The Vorthak fleet that had come to enslave humanity was now ready to help carry Earth's vision of symbiotic civilization to the stars. As Blake prepared her reconnaissance ship for the journey back to Earth, she realized that she had witnessed the birth of something entirely new in galactic history, a form of warfare based not on destruction, but on transformation and mutual improvement. Admiral Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UES Terra Firma, watching as former Vorthak warships moved in perfect formation alongside human vessels through Earth's orbital space. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just months ago, but now it represented the new reality that Earth had created through the most successful military campaign in galactic history. The Terra Firma itself demonstrated Earth's revolutionary approach to space technology. Unlike traditional vessels that were built from metal and machinery, this ship had been grown from specially designed organisms that combined the best aspects of biological adaptation with technological function. The hull could repair itself. From damage, the power systems evolved to become more efficient over time, and the life support systems created better living conditions for both human and alien crew members. Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as Earth's first galactic integration officer, oversaw the process of bringing Vorthok personnel to Earth's orbital facilities. The former conquerors arrived expecting prison camps or processing centers, but instead found something that no species in galactic history had ever experienced: genuine partnership offered freely and without conditions. The integration facilities that orbited Earth were marvels of biological engineering that made even advanced Vorthok technology seem primitive by comparison. Living buildings that grew to accommodate their inhabitants, atmospheric systems that adapted to the needs of any species, and medical facilities that could enhance the biological capabilities of any life form while maintaining their essential nature. Supreme Commander Zeth Kar, now Admiral Zeth Kar of the Terran Defense Force, stood beside Morrison as they watched the latest group of Vorthok officers undergo the integration process. Each alien was given a choice that their species had never offered to any conquered people. They could have the Earth organisms removed and returned to their original biological state, or they could accept full integration into what Earth called the Terran Collective. The choice is entirely yours, Morrison explained to each group of Vorthok personnel. Integration will enhance your natural abilities and extend your lifespan significantly, but it also means becoming part of something larger than your individual species. You will retain your cultural identity and personal autonomy, but you will also gain the benefits of biological partnership with Earth's life forms. Most Vorthok chose integration without hesitation. The enhanced capabilities they had experienced during the fleet conversion had shown them possibilities they never knew existed. Tactical thinking became sharper, physical abilities improved dramatically, and the sense of connection to a larger purpose was more satisfying than anything their conquest-focused culture had provided. Dr. Carolyn Fisher, now serving as Earth's Chief Biological Integration Specialist, monitored the process with instruments that tracked the symbiotic relationships forming between human organisms and alien biology. The results exceeded even her most optimistic projections as Vorthok physiology adapted to Earth's biological systems in ways that created genuine mutual benefit. The integration is working better than we hoped, she reported to President Matthew Kane during one of their regular briefings. Vorthok tactical intelligence combined with Earth's biological adaptability is producing capabilities that neither species could achieve alone. We're seeing innovations in space travel, planetary engineering, and biological sciences that are advancing faster than our most aggressive timelines predicted. Kane nodded as he reviewed reports from throughout human space where former Vorthok territories were being transformed through Earth's biological approach to civilization. Planets that had been strip-mined for resources were being restored through engineered organisms that could rebuild entire ecosystems in decades rather than millennia. Populations that had been enslaved for generations were being offered the same integration choices as their former oppressors. The galaxy watched these developments with a mixture of awe and terror. Earth had not only defeated the most powerful military force in known history, but had transformed them into enthusiastic partners in expansion and improvement. Other species began receiving messages from Earth offering the same biological partnerships that had revolutionized Vorthok society. Commander Susan Blake, now commanding a hybrid bioship that incorporated both human and Vorthok design principles, led diplomatic missions to species throughout the galaxy. The message she carried was simple but revolutionary. Earth offered enhancement and cooperation rather than conquest and domination. "We don't want to rule you," Blake explained to the Council of the Xanthari Republic during one such mission. "We want to grow with you. Our biological systems can improve your natural capabilities while preserving everything that makes your species unique. The choice is always yours, but the benefits of partnership speak for themselves." The Xanthari had been skeptical at first, remembering Earth as a primitive species that they had helped learn galactic customs and technology. But the evidence was impossible to ignore as former Vorthok worlds became more prosperous and advanced under Earth's biological guidance than they had ever been under technological conquest. Dr. Marcus Lee stood in his laboratory aboard Terra Firma, working with Vorthic scientists who had once served the Dominion's research divisions. Together, they were developing new forms of biological technology that combined Earth's adaptive organisms with Vorthak's advanced understanding of matter and energy. The results were producing innovations that neither species could have achieved independently. The key insight, Lee explained to his mixed human and alien research team, is that biological systems are fundamentally more adaptable than technological ones. Technology must be designed for specific purposes, but biology evolves to meet whatever challenges it encounters. By combining our biological mastery with your technological knowledge, we're creating systems that can adapt and improve themselves indefinitely. The practical applications of this cooperation were transforming galactic civilization at unprecedented speed, bioships that could travel faster than light by growing their own space-folding organs, planetary systems that could be terraformed in years rather than centuries, and medical technologies that could extend the healthy lifespan of any species. While enhancing their natural abilities, President Kane's final address to the galactic community was broadcast from Earth's orbital gardens, where children of dozens of species played together among plants that had been adapted to create perfect environments for any form of life. Human children laughed alongside young Vorthak who had never known the conquest-focused culture of their parents, while Xanthari youngsters explored with enhanced senses that allowed them to perceive beauty in ways their ancestors never could. We came to the stars not to conquer or destroy, Kane said, addressing representatives of every major species in the galaxy, but to grow and help others grow with us. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to thrive, and strong enough to support any form of life we can imagine together. The transformation was not limited to Earth's immediate neighbors. Bioships carrying Earth's organisms began appearing in distant regions of the galaxy, offering the same partnerships to species that had never heard of humanity. The approach was always the same: demonstrate the benefits of cooperation, offer enhancement without coercion, and allow each species to choose their own level of participation within a generation. The galaxy that had been ruled by fear and conquest for millions of years had become a cooperative network of enhanced civilizations working together toward goals that no single species could have imagined. The Vorthic fleet that had come to enslave Earth had become the foundation of a new form of civilization based on mutual improvement rather than domination. In the end, Earth's true weapon had been revealed as something more powerful than any technology or military force: the ability to make other species want to become better than they had ever been before.